Hi class, welcome back to part 2 of today's lecture. Here is where we left off a few moments ago. We talked about what fixed width layouts could look like on the screen, and now we are ready to move on to the next slide, which is how do we create fixed width layouts. As you already know, since we talked about this briefly before the break, fixed width layouts are created by specifying values in pixel units. And pixel units are an absolute measure. The content of the entire page is encapsulated by a div container, a division container that can then be set to a specific pixel width. This encapsulating div may also be centered in the browser window. It's the designer's choice on how to implement this. The widths of the column elements and even the margins and the padding are also specified in pixels. First, we need to pick a page width, which is usually based on a common screen size, that is the screen dimensions in pixels. How do we decide what screen size we need to create pages for? Well, we look at the resolution of computer displays and the current market share, and we decide how to proceed from there. Until recently, some of the most popular screen sizes were 1024 by 768 and 1280 by 1024, 800 by 600. So this is a very dynamic market, dynamically changing figure. But here's a snapshot of what the market looked like in the recent past. Okay. Now, how do you decide which one screen size you want to program for? Again, that's entirely up to you, the web designer. You decide what is most important. If you are creating a web page for mobile devices, you may want to take that into account and program for a small screen, a smaller screen rather. Or if you're creating a web page that has a lot of detail and you want people to be able to view it on the computer screen, on larger computer screens, you take that into account as well. Okay. An example? Well, before we look at the example, let me just also mention that we also need to decide where the fixed width layout should be positioned in the browser window. By default, it will be placed at the left edge of the browser window with the extra unused space to the right of it. Some designers opt to center the page, splitting the extra space over left and right margins, which may make the page look as though it better fills the browser window. And this is a strategy for controlling the width of a page while allowing for varying screen resolutions. Here is an example of a fixed width page with some margins on the left and the right side. Okay. And the next examples are going to show us two more fixed width layouts. Both use fixed width pages but position the content differently in the browser window. So this first one here assumes a screen resolution of 800 by 600 pixels. It is a left-aligned fixed page layout, and you can see the extra space there showing on the right. How do you implement something like this? The style sheet is available on the next page, and you can see here that we have a division called wrapper with a width of 750 pixels and an absolutely set position. This container div is for the two column elements, and it's going to have like I said, a total width of 750 pixels. Then we have the extras and the main. There's two columns. The first column is positioned top left of screen, and the second one flows after it, but has a fixed size of 525 pixels, which is really the difference between 750 and 225, the width and the margin. You take those out and you figure out what the width for the remaining column would be. The first column has a fixed width of 200 pixels. This is this part right here. And the second column creates a 25 pixel breathing space. This is this margin right down here. What does the markup look like? Nothing special here really, we've already seen this. We need to create the wrapper division, and then we create the two columns inside as two additional div containers. Alright. Now the next example is a centered fixed page layout. As you can see, again, the width here is set at 750 pixels. The two columns have predefined widths as well, and there is a margin of 25 pixels between the two columns. In CSS, the proper way to center a fixed width element is to specify a width for the div element that holds all the page's contents. Then set its left and right margins to auto. According to the CSS visual formatting model, this will have the net effect of centering the element in the browser window. We've already spoken about this in class. The margin widths will adjust automatically to use the available window space. And this is why you see here margin left being set to auto and margin right being set to auto as well. The remaining part of the style sheet on the next page right here. Again, we are assuming that we are programming for a screen with a pixel resolution of 800 by 600. The wrapper division, the first part of the styling code here, is for the div container that contains the two elements, which quite often is referred to as the wrapper. And then the actual two column elements are shown down here, the extras and the main. And once again, the end result should look like what you're seeing on the screen right now. That concludes the discussion on fixed layouts, and we move on to elastic layouts. A very quick summary here of elastic layouts. They combine resizable text with predictable line lengths. This particular type of layout expands or contracts with the size of the text. If the user makes the text size larger, the layout expands proportionally. Likewise, if the user likes the text size very small, the layout shrinks to fit. The result is that line lengths, in terms of words or characters per line, stay the same regardless of the text size. And here is an example of an elastic web page. And yet one more screenshot of the same website with the largest font size. Notice that when the text size gets bigger, so does the content area of the page. However, instead of rewrapping in the larger layout space, the line length and line breaks stay exactly the same as before. Advantages and disadvantages of the elastic approach. Okay, let's add a couple of each. Advantages, this kind of approach provides for a consistent layout while allowing flexibility in text size. So, consistency. And you also have tighter control over line lengths than liquid and fixed layouts. So tighter control. Alright, disadvantages. With this kind of approach, images do not lend themselves to rescaling along with the text and the rest of the layout. So image scale may be a problem. And then the width of the layout might exceed the width of the browser window at larger text sizes. So browser width could become a problem with this type of approach. How to create elastic layouts. As we've already established, the key to elastic layouts is using the EM the unit of measurement that is based on the current font size of the text. If you recall this, our presentations in class, EM stands for the width of the M, capital case M character of the font being used. And percentages can be used as well. So for example, for an element with a 12 pixel text, an EM is considered to be 12 pixels. Specifying the font size of text, say in paragraphs, in EMs, allows the text to be resized with the zoom and text size features of all modern browsers. An elastic design, in conclusion, we can say mixes the two other main layout types. It works by sizing all elements with EMS, and the goal is to have everything grow larger or smaller in proportion with the user's preference. Okay, examples. Let's take a look at a two-column layout which consists of a main part and a sidebar part. So you can see the two elements here. The wrapper is set to a maximum width of 70 EM, right down here. It's the maximum width. By using EM as the unit for the max width, the width of the page will depend on font size and line length, and will be similar no matter what size the text is. Now to create the two columns, widths are assigned to the two components, and then the two components are floated in opposite directions. So one of them is going to be floated to the left, and the other one will float to the right. The widths are set in percentages to make both columns expand and contract as the browser window is resized. This is a liquid kind of layout. Now for the elastic part, for all text content, specify the measurements in either percentages or EMS, and here's how to do it with both approaches. Okay. Let's take a look at just a few more examples of multi-column layouts. First one here, using floats. A popular way to create a multi-column layout is to float one column to one side and let the remaining columns just wrap around it. A margin may be used to keep the area around the floated column clear. And one of the advantages of floats is that it's easier to start page components such as a footer below the columned area of the page. And the drawback of float-based layouts is that they're dependent on the order in which the components, for example the divs for the various sections such as the columns or the headers, appear in the HTML document. Getting the layout effect you're after may result in the sections of the HTML document not being in the logical order. It's not a big deal, but just something to be aware of. Here's an example of two columns with a header and a footer using the float method with a liquid layout. The markup and the styles in this example produce a liquid two-column layout with a header area, a main column of content, a sidebar, and a footer, as shown. And there's your markup right there, nothing special. Again, all the styling takes place in the CSS part of the code. This is just the HTML part. Here's your CSS. The padding that you see here, 15 pixels, is an all-around header box, if you will. So this just allows you to set that part of the header to make it look like a box. The main content div is floated to the left, as you can see here, and is set to 60% of the available browser window width. And a margin is applied both to the left and the right sides of the floated main div to just add some breathing space. As for the extras component, we have a margin added on the right edge of the extras div to add some space between it and the browser window. And then for the footer div, it gets cleared with the clear property so that it starts below the floated main content column. Okay, and finally the body. The margin and the padding on the body element have been set to 0, right down here to clear the default browser settings, and this allows the shaded header and footer areas to go right up to the edge of the browser window without any white space gaps. Let's see what the result looks like. Alright, one more example. Now we're going to look at a 3 columns with a header and a footer using the float method and a fixed layout. Here's our markup. The order here is important. Okay, I should mention that. So feel free to play with this, move things around and see what the end result looks like. A couple of notes on the markup. All of the content elements in the document have been placed in a div container to which the fixed width measurement is applied. With floating, the order that the elements appear in the source document is important. To get the narrow sidebars, the links and the news on either side of the main content, we need to place the links div before the main div and the news div after the main div to keep the style sheet straightforward. And there's our style sheet. The style sheet floats the links, main, and the news divs to the left, as you can see here, all shown in red. So we're stacking everything from left to right. And the result is that they accumulate against the left edge of the containing div block, thus creating 3 columns. Because there are no padding, border, or margin settings for each floated element, the sum of their widths is equal to the width of the outer container. Alright. Here's our footer and our body. The clear both that you see up here, this property has been added to the footer to make sure that it starts below all of the floated elements. We've already done that in class. And our result is visible on the next page. All right. I'm going to stop here to give us another break for a few moments, and then we'll come back for our final third part of the presentation. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in a few minutes.